Thanks for listening to Exploring the Wineglass podcast, the podcast for people who love wine. I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program and WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wineglass on all the socials as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Exploring the Wineglass. When I went through the WSET Level 2 class, at no point was Turkish wine ever brought into the conversation. Quite some time ago, I came across a person on Twitter that I decided to follow because she was always talking about Turkish wine. Through each post, her enthusiasm and passion for the wine showed, and everyone who knows me knows that I love to share someone's passion for wine. Andrea Lemieux, aka the Quirky Cork, began enjoying wine while she lived in Washington, D.C., but it wasn't until she moved to Turkey for a job that she fell in love with it. Join us as she tells me about the long history of winemaking in Turkey, teaches me about pronouncing those difficult-to-pronounce Turkish wine grapes, and why we can't find these wines in the United States. She also will provide tips on the best places to visit on your next trip to Turkey. If you enjoy this podcast, please take a time to rate, review, and subscribe. iTunes suggests podcasts based on these star reviews, and each new review can help other wine lovers find our podcast. Sláinte. Hey everybody, welcome to Allure of the Poor. I am your host, Lori Budd. I am a UC Davis winemaking graduate and a WSET Level 2 graduate. And today I am so excited. I mean, like so to infinity excited because, social media really makes the world a smaller place. And my guest today, we have been chatting on Twitter for a very, very long time, and I adore reading her writings, and just recently she started doing these cool animated videos of the wine tastings, and I absolutely love them, and I get so excited when I see them as I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I see them, and I have to blow them up on so that I can see what they are. But today, my guest is Andrea Lemieux, and she is like the Turkish wine guru. Like, she talks about grapes that I have never ever heard of before, and every time she talks about it, I want to run out and try to find some. So, Andrea, welcome.
Thank you so much. I am so beyond thrilled to be here. Well, here in Istanbul here, but virtually here with you.
virtually here. And I thank you. It's really early in the morning or late at night, however you want to look at it, for you. So I appreciate you taking the time to share your expertise with my listeners, because this is very different than any other podcast that I have ever done, because, these are grape varieties that just aren't in the common, household here, and you have such a passion. So, me and my passion for wine, it's just so exciting. But I did see you take a sip. So what are you drinking? What are you drinking?
Yeah, it's 1:30 in the morning, so I, let myself open a bottle.
There you go.
I am drinking, actually, I've got the bottle right here. I am drinking one of our best sparkling wines. This is called Yaşasın. It's from one of our producers, Vinkara, which I know is available in the United States. I did check.
Okay.
So this is available from a few retailers in the U.S., I think possibly even online. And it's a Blanc de Noir, traditional method sparkling wine made from the grape Kalajik Karasa.
One more time?
It's called Kalajik Karasa.
Kalajik Karasa. Close enough? Close enough.
Yeah, it's all good.
Close enough. Well, I too am sipping, and we do, as you know, I have Winefabet Street after this, and Debbie and I have made a pact that we don't drink the wine prior. So it is a Dornfelder, and I am a little bit nervous because I didn't realize I picked up a sweet one. So, yeah.
I didn't know they made sweet.
Neither did I. So I think I've only had one Dornfelder ever before. And now this is going to be a sweet one. So I am drinking Cab Franc.
It's a good grade.
I don't know. I've heard of this one before.
A little something about it, maybe, but yeah.
I've heard of this one before. This is actually from Derby Estates, from Paso Robles. So, I love to support local. And Derby is one of my favorite wineries in Paso. I do frequent them on a regular basis. So virtually, I raise a glass with you, Slancha, and cheers.
Afiyet olsun, as we say in Turkey.
All right. See, I'm learning so much already. All right. So before we get into the wines of Turkey, we got to get into a little bit about you. So, how and when did you get into wine?
Oh, gosh. So, I was a wine drinker when I lived in the U.S. I lived for quite a long time in D.C., so we had access to all of the, the Virginia and the Maryland wineries. But I think beyond whether or not I liked the wine, I didn't think much more about it. And then I moved to Turkey about 7 years ago. Actually, 7 years next week.
Oh, happy anniversary.
And we don't get a lot of wine in the way of imported wine, certainly not quality imported wine. So I started drinking Turkish wine somewhat out of necessity, and somewhere along the way kind of had this, what the heck is this great kind of moment, and started just reading about wine, and then I read some more about it, and then I started looking up wine blogs and, visiting wineries here, and it just, I don't know, it just kind of happened. I just kind of fell into it, and a few years ago I was in Italy on a food tour, and the tour guide was telling us that she was a certified sommelier, had done her studying in both Italy and Australia, I think she said, and it just kind of hit me. I went, oh, but wine is a job, that's a thing.
Wait a minute.
No. So I was like, oh, I know what I want to do when I grow up now.
That's awesome. So what actually made you go to Turkey?
I got transferred here for work.
Oh, okay.
For a job that was like a short-term project, but I kind of fell in love with Istanbul and never really liked DC all that much, so I decided to stay. And 7 years later, don't regret it.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. It's nice to hear a positive relocation thing, you hear lots of times that people relocate to another country or whatever, and then that job kind of dissolves and then they're stranded. So it's actually really nice to hear a positive thing. What went through your mind when they said, hey, do you want to go to Turkey?
I actually was so thrilled. I had been here maybe a year previous to my move on holiday. Fell in love with the city so much that I almost called my roommate back in the States to say, sell my stuff for rent. I'm not coming home.
Wow.
I know. So I had all these plans to quit my job and move out here on my own and do I don't know what. And then suddenly a project here opened up and they needed somebody to come out here and represent it. I know, it's just kind of exactly that.
Wow.
So it was really, really lucky for me.
All the stars were aligned for you. That's awesome. That's awesome. I think about how difficult it was, or how, not difficult, crazy it was for us to relocate from New Jersey to California, I can't imagine the logistics of relocating to another country. I mean,
I got lucky in that regard too, though.
Did you?
I made my parents ship all my boxes, so I just packed them and moved here with a suitcase, and then made them ship everything later.
Wow, and you got them like a month later?
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. So what exactly do you do, and do you have a professional wine job?
Well, my day job, as I like to call it, I do consulting for an events management company here. So mostly we arrange large meetings for international companies who want to come to Turkey to hold events. Has nothing to do with wine, but it pays for my wine.
There you go.
That's what's important. But then, kind of in addition to that, I don't really get paid for it. I maybe break even if I'm lucky. I give wine tastings on mostly a monthly basis, mostly to other foreigners, but also I have a number of Turks who come to my tastings who also don't know about their wine. And just trying to spread the word about Turkish wine and how good it actually is.
And that's I mean, I think that's so cool, because you're totally sharing your passion with other people who want to learn, and that's incredible in my world,
It's so much fun. It really is. I absolutely love doing it.
And now, is your education self-taught? Did you take classes? Combination? Because we all self-teach at some point.
We do. Yeah, no, it's a combination. It's mostly self-taught. I did take and managed to pass the first WSET level here. I'm hoping to skip 2 and go directly into 3, because courses 1 and 2 are only offered in Turkish here. And my Turkish got me through level 1, but I really don't think it will get me through level 2.
Oh.
Yeah, we do level 3 in English, so hoping they'll let me skip the level.
Oh, wow. But
other than that, it's reading, it's listening to podcasts, and it's talking to winemakers. I've visited the vast majority of the wineries here, and I've met some phenomenal people and have learned a lot from them.
I think that, I have it from a lot of different angles. My undergrad and my graduate degree are in biology, microbiology, which had nothing to do with the wine world. Honestly, my undergrad was marine biology. So, I mean, I was supposed to be working with dolphins right now. A little far cry. But the biology and the microbiology definitely play a big role in the winemaking world. And then we did go back, and Mike, my husband, is a food scientist, so that obviously makes sense. But, we both went back to school. We went to UC Davis to go through the winemaking program because we wanted to focus in on that. And every vintage, you learn something new. Like, it's on the job, or on the dirt training, basically. Every vintage something new comes up, or you develop something different. But I did go through I skipped level 1 WSET, and I went with level 2, and I graduated, I think it was May. I just did it. I think it was May, and I was stressed over it, and everybody in my class is like, "Oh my God, you're a winemaker. You can do this." I'm like, no, this is a whole different ball game. This is, send me 50 or 100 questions on winemaking. I'm going to be all right. But, Australia and, sending out good vibes to Australia today, but learning the regions, and Italy, all the DOCs and all that's a whole different level of education.
That terrifies me. I am terrified.
Yeah. my husband asks, he's like, so are you going to do WSET 3? Like, you know, you going to do it? And I'm like, not at the moment. Like, right? Because I put I think I have 450 index cards from level 2.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You know?
I see other people studying for level 3, and I am terrified. I'm like, oh, I'm not studying at that level. Should I be studying at that level? Oh my God, what am I doing?
Right. You know, a couple of the people who were in the class with me went on to level 3, and they all passed. And they're like, oh, you could do this without it. I'm like, you have no idea what I was doing at night to, you know, get that, you know, but I'm way too competitive. Like, I can't just pass. I had to pass with distinction, you know, and if I didn't, it would have been a complete failure to me. You know, I'm like, and I'm not saying people who don't pass with distinction is failure. It's my personality.
Exactly. It's a self-motivational or self-terrorism.
Yeah. It's masochism, right? It's like, you know, it's crazy. It's crazy. All right, so you have a combination of education, and I think hands-on is again, nothing against books or whatever, but I think hands-on is really what makes it, at least for me, makes it stick in my brain more so, you know.
Same.
I can honestly say out of those 450 index cards, probably about 300 of them are out of my brain already, you know. But it is. All right, so let's get to Turkey. All right, so for those who, and I'm not gonna lie, there was no turkey in WSET level 2. There was
no. There was not. I don't think there maybe gets a paragraph in the level 3 book at most.
Right. So let's start off with, where is it for us geographically, you know, poor people there?
Don't be silly. No, I mean, Turkey's actually quite huge. It's just kind of stuck in the middle of a bunch of things. So I think it often gets overlooked if you're looking at a map. But it famously straddles 2 continents, or rather Istanbul does anyway, and borders Bulgaria and Greece to the west, and Georgia, Armenia, Iraq, Iran, and Syria to the east. And then, of course, we've got the Mediterranean, the Aegean, the Black Sea. I mean, it's right in the middle of everything. And it's huge. It covers some 300,000 square miles, I think.
Oh, wow.
Home to 80 million people. We have 20 of those are in Istanbul, I think.
Wow. Well, that's all, you know, I think that's all people ever see. Is Istanbul.
Is Istanbul, or maybe the coasts. There are quite a lot of really beautiful, like, resort beach areas here, yes, along the Aegean and the Mediterranean. So I think, you see Istanbul and you see the coast.
All right. Okay. And see, now I'm going to be really naive, I'll admit my stupidity here. There's completely safe Istanbul, like no issues, nothing, right? We don't have anything like the trains that are in India, right? It's very modernized, right?
It is very modern, yes. It's very, very modern. And they are expanding the metro every year, for which we are ever so grateful, because it is a huge city. You could drive, I think, for 2 hours in any direction, even without standard Istanbul traffic, and still be technically in the city.
Oh.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's more of a state than a city properly. Okay. It's a huge, huge area.
How many, like, airports, like, for the whole country? Like,
oh gosh,
you've got to have multiple airports, right? Because it's massive.
There are 2 in Istanbul. Izmir has 1, I think. Ankara has just 1. Trabzon, Elazığ, I mean, no, there are airports everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's just a huge, huge country. And there is a fast train that goes, I think, from Istanbul to Ankara. And there are a few other places where the train goes. But otherwise, it's the bus, which, no thank you. I won't be on a bus if it's longer than 3 hours. That's my rule. The bus or it's airplanes, because it's a big country.
All right. So you literally fly from one part of Turkey to another part more.
Yes,
Okay.
Absolutely. And in visiting the wineries, we fly into an airport somewhere, we pick up a rental car, and then we go from there. And sometimes it's still another hour or two drive until we hit the first winery.
Wow. So that actually was going to be one of my questions. Is Istanbul? That's your main city, your state that you're talking about. Are there wine regions within there, or is everything outside of there?
Everything is outside, but the closest wine region, we do have some, if you just count the traffic, there are some wineries that are within an hour and a half to 2 hour drive. So you can do a day trip if you want to get up really early. I don't usually.
No. It's tough to wake up early to then go drive, to then go drink, and then to go drive back. It's tough. That makes it tough.
It is.
It is. So what climate would you say that the wine regions typically have?
Oh, everything. Truly. I think it's because it is such a vast country. So if you're up in Thrace, which is kind of our nearest wine region, and that's where the border with Bulgaria and Greece is, Thrace. They all have their own. There it's very kind of cold continental. I think they have snow already. We get snow like maybe 2 or 3 days out of the whole year in Istanbul, which I appreciate. I hate snow.
I'm with you.
But it's covered with snow up there. But then you go down to the extreme southwest of the country to the Mardin Media area, which is right on the border with Syria. And there it's, more of an arid continental, I think, but we also have Mediterranean. There's some oceanic influences. It all depends on where you are in the country. And there are small wine regions kind of spread around the whole that huge landmass.
Awesome. So, excluding wine, right, for one moment, what's like Turkey's import, export, what?
Importing, I think they import a lot of cars, electronics, like personal electronics, phones, computers, that kind of thing. I know I'm missing something else, but it's a lot more industrial, electronic kind of things. Export-wise, they make a lot of, what do you call them, like household appliances. There are 2 really big companies here, and they export mostly to Europe. They're really big. They're big shipbuilders, which I learned while doing a little bit of research for this. They built high-end yachts, I guess.
All right.
Right. That was new to me. They're also one of the world's largest producers of, if not actually the largest, hazelnuts and raisins.
They are competing with my Fresno?
They are, I'm sorry. They are the 6th largest grape producing country in the world.
Wow.
Huge chunk of that goes into raisins.
Wow. Do they have we've got Sunkist, is that Raisin Made, whatever, do they have their own brand of raisin, or are they exporting that for us?
No, I honestly don't think it gets exported under the Turkish name. I have a feeling that they have contracts with international companies.
Wow, that's kind of cool. All right, so let's get down to some WSET stuff here. That is not in any book that you're ever going to read as of now. So let's talk about a little bit of the history of Turkish wine. When did it start? What are their main, what do they do?
That's such a huge, it's how much time do you have?
Right.
So Turkish wine history goes back to the Hittites. I think they have a pretty similar timeline with, Georgia and Armenia as far as having that level of history. And the Hittites were serious about their wine. Like, they laid down regulations that then carried on to the Greek and the Roman populations as they came through. But that kind of history aside, modern winemaking didn't really begin here until about the 40s. For a very brief period, sorry, rewinding a little bit, because this is a really cool little factoid, I think. For a very brief period, the Ottoman Empire was the largest wine exporter to Europe. This was when Syrah first came through and was devastating Europe, and they had no wine because they had no more vineyards, right? Turkey hadn't been hit yet. It did get hit eventually, but it hadn't been hit yet. The Ottoman Empire was exporting more wine to Europe during that period. It's something like 6 times the current annual production.
Wow.
I know, right? It's really kind of cool. But then the Turkish Republic came in, and there was the population exchange when all of the Greek Turks went back to Greece, and all of the Turkish Greeks came back here. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But unfortunately, Turkey lost most of its winemaking knowledge at that period. So there was a big chunk of about 20, 30 years when wine really petered off here. And then it came back in around the 40s with 2 of our biggest, oldest companies, Dolaja and Kavaklıdere. And then it kind of went along, okay, for a few years. But it wasn't really until the 90s that really quality winemaking started here. It started with 2 small wineries who really spearheaded this small production quality winemaking here. And then it got another boost in the early aughts, I think, when the Turkish government was giving grants to new winemakers to put in vineyards and to keep the industry going. So now we have something like 160 registered wineries.
Oh, okay. Less than Paso.
So it's quite large for what people think the wine industry might be, not comparatively. But I would hesitate to guess that maybe only 80, 90 of those are really quality wineries. A lot of the rest of them are bulk productions that they don't really have recognizable commercial names.
And when you go into, do you have like wine shops, food shops, do you have dedicated wine shops? I'm so stupid when it comes to outside.
No. Why would you know? I mean, you must come, obviously, and check these out yourself. But no, we do. Particularly in Istanbul and Izmir and a few other cities, because gastronomy has really started taking off here, and wine has been able to kind of pitch its star to that as well. But there are a number of dedicated bottle shops. We have a couple of really great little wine bars here in Istanbul, but we also have we have Carrefour. So I don't know if we have Carrefour. But between them and a couple other big grocery store chains, you can also get pretty decent wine just at the local grocery store.
Okay. And the wines that are in that shop, are they, not exact, obviously, but are you getting, are you getting American wine? Are you getting French wine? Are you able to get a sample of the main wine regions?
To a degree. We actually don't have a lot of American wine. We see a little bit of Californian wine and 1 or 2 Washington State wines, but both because of the alcohol taxes and the import taxes, imported wine here is maddeningly expensive. But we do also see a lot of European wine, French mostly. Turks love Bordeaux. You could drown in the amount of Bordeaux here. But we get wine from Germany and Austria, and every once in a while you might even see a wine from Lebanon. I know, it's really kind of interesting what you can and can't get here as far as the selection.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Exploring the Wine Glass is brought to you by Dracaena Wines. Dracaena Wines is an artisan winery located in Paso Robles, California. They have been producing wine since 2013. Their first vintage began with one wine, their classic Cabernet Franc, which received a 91 in Wine Enthusiast. Since then, they have increased production, received several accolades, including double gold medals in the San Francisco Chronicle Wine Competition and consistent 90-plus ratings. In addition to their classic Cabernet Franc, they now produce a single vineyard, single clone Reserve Cabernet Franc and a Rosé of Syrah. Although they've increased production every year, they continue to sell out each vintage. Find out more about Dracaena Wines and their award-winning wines at dracaenawines.com and let them help turn your moments into great memories. Now, you can't have a conversation about wine and import and export. Now, the tariffs would have no impact on you.
No.
Right.
No, we're already getting hit really hard by our own tariffs here.
So can you name a Californian wine that you can readily get?
Readily, I'm not so sure about readily. What is the maker? Oh, this is killing me. There's a California Zinfandel wine that we can get in duty free, and I suddenly am just completely forgetting the name of it.
From Lodi?
It's one of, yes.
From Lodi. So Michael David?
No, I wish.
Oh.
Maybe we can get Michael David here.
I'm just trying to see, what would a bottle... all right, so forget the name. What would a bottle of that California Zin, if you were living here versus if you're living there?
So let's say back when I lived in DC and went to Trader Joe's all the time, and my $8 to $10 bottle of wine from Trader Joe's is going to set you back at least $30 here.
Wow.
Yeah, I drink a lot of Turkish wine. I mean, it's not really any cheaper depending on how far up the quality chain you go, but at least you have gone up the quality chain, and especially for me, knowing how much that bottle would have cost me in the States, sometimes I just
torture. Right. It's always funny when you can get it for a certain price. If you just walked in and you're like, oh, $30 for this, okay. But when you could get it for $8 someplace else, it's a little torture.
Yeah, it is. I drink a lot when I go back to the States.
Got to make up time.
I do. I have people pre-shop for me, and I have my bottles ready.
There you go. There you go. Well, the next time you come back, you'll have to let me know, because I have a very good friend who lives in Annapolis, right outside of DC. So I can always crash at his place. Ryan, I'm coming to crash at your place. So I could always crash at his place, and then we could have a real in-life meetup.
That would be so brilliant. I absolutely love that.
He would be more than happy to drink wine with us, I'm sure.
Okay. Fantastic.
I'm sure. All right. So, do you have of this wine regions that you have? I'm assuming there's some bigger players and some smaller ones. Are the bigger ones more bulk, or can you get quality with the bigger ones?
You can absolutely get quality with the bigger ones. Yes. So the bigger ones simply that's the wrong word. Sorry. They just hit all of the price points.
Okay.
So we have the wineries that offer everything from, we have this term here in Turkey. In Turkish it's köpek öldüren, which literally means dog killer. So there are some of the bigger, I know. There are some of the bigger wineries here who offer everything from that level to super premium.
Okay.
Just hitting all the price points. So.
Okay. And then
and we have a lot of small producers now as well, which is really brilliant.
Okay. And how easy is it for you to go, like if you wanted to go wine tasting, do these people have tasting rooms that are open to the public? Do you have to schedule appointments?
It depends a lot on where you go. Wine tourism is a really missed opportunity right now in Turkey.
Okay.
A lot of the wineries are trying to change that. A lot of them are doing their best to change it, and quite a few areas have formed partnerships amongst the wineries themselves. They've developed their own wine routes to help encourage this, and they've built hotels attached to their wineries and restaurants because quite often there's nothing else around them. But for the most part, yes, you do still need to make appointments, either because in some cases they are just that popular, or because they're so small and out of the way, they don't necessarily actually have the facilities, but they are always happy to welcome people. Turkish hospitality is such an amazing thing.
Really?
And then when you combine that with wine people, and I don't care where they're from, I think wine people are just some of the most hospitable and welcoming people ever.
Well, it might have to do that we always have alcohol in our system.
So that probably doesn't hurt. But I mean, especially when you're here, and here as a foreigner, they are just so, I think, partially flabbergasted and just so heartwarmed that you as a foreigner are interested in their wine and in their weird little grapes, their godforsaken grapes.
See? So yeah, it was like actually a perfect preface to this conversation, the godforsaken grapes, and I was so happy to see you be part of it.
I was so thrilled to take part. It's so hard for me to source wine that's appropriate for the wine pairing weekend activity, and I saw this and I went,
wait a second.
That's my thing.
This is my whole country. Wait a second.
Yes, it is.
And I had to actually really, really laugh at the umlauts, because it is. You put the umlauts in there and Americans run away, man. It's I've said that with several of the other regions that I've tasted through. The same thing with Greece. It's like, these wines are incredible. Your cat?
Yes. Running back and forth.
Greece has some amazing wines, but you need a translation book with you in order to know what you're drinking. And I think Americans are terrified of that. And I get it. When I first got into wine, I would definitely pick something I recognized over something I had never heard. Now I'm like, nope, know that one. Ooh, what's this? Now I'm going after the ones that I've never heard of before,
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, speaking of Greece, not that I want to plug another country over my own adopted country, but I went last year to their big, huge wine festival, Bonerama, which is like the first weekend in March. And we made a beeline they had a special section for essentially unheard of grapes.
Oh, okay.
And we just went straight there. And it was like, tell us about these things that we have no idea what they are.
Right?
Yeah,
see?
It's brilliant.
The wine geeks unite, man. That's where we want to be. That's where we want to be.
Absolutely. And unfortunately for Turkey, they have both umlauts and they have that little hat over the G. Yes. And then they have I actually don't know what the term for it is, the little thing under the C.
See? Yeah, I don't know what that's called either. I don't know what that's called either. But I know, you know what? I think that's a little less intimidating. The little C. I think people just see the C, but yeah. Yeah. The umlaut and the G, the whatever that thing is, that's a little more, nerve-wracking there.
terrifying. Yeah.
So with that being said, before we actually get into these godforsaken grapes of Turkey, do you have indigenous grapes there? Do you have the international, not indigenous, the international grapes there?
Oh, yes. They are, I'm sorry to say, more popular than the indigenous grapes. I think, if I could hazard a guess, I think it would be because when the wine industry really kind of came back here, people were traveling to Europe, especially France, and they were learning about wine there, and they came back, and so they started, we didn't have wine here at the time, right? So they were emulating what they had learned. Right. So Syrah is actually, I think, the third most widely planted grape here, and the first most popular of all of the grapes. It goes Sultania, Eküzgüzü, and Syrah.
Oh.
But Syrah, Cab, Merlot, Cab Franc, lots and lots of Chardonnay. We even have one producer up in France who is planting, I think, just kind of every grape that he can think of. He just loves to experiment, God bless him. So he's got, in addition to a bunch of indigenous grapes, he has Riesling and Albarino, and he's even planting some Greek grapes now, and Mavrud, which is Bulgarian, and he's doing everything.
Wow. See, that's cool because, 10 years down the road, he's going to be, dominant because he's going to really learn which grapes really can grow in that environment, and then everybody's going to be behind the 8 ball trying to catch up with him. See, he's smart.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's smart. All right, so let's get to these umlauts and the things with the G and all of that stuff. So let's go over a few of your most common indigenous grapes and tell me what can we expect, if we ever can get our hands on these in our glass.
Okay, so I think, I already mentioned that the first, or the most widely planted black grape variety here is called Eküzgüzü. It's also one of the harder ones to say. It's got 4 umlauts in it. Yeah, it's a challenge. It means bull's eye.
Oh, okay.
Because the grape itself is quite large, round, and very, very black in color, so it looks like a bullseye. It's kind of, if I would compare it to an international grape, it's kind of like our Merlot. Okay. It's got a little bit more lushness and roundness on the palate, very fruit forward, but also takes very well to oak. And then is kind of a natural blending partner with a grape called Boazke, which means throat burner. Because this is, sometimes they have really great names for these grapes. It's called throat burner because it is so tannic. It is so highly tannic.
Wow.
That if it's made clumsily, it will just, it'll not be nice things to you. If made well, it can be really beautiful and have a lot of structure, I guess it's our cap.
Okay.
And then the third most common black grape is the one that I'm drinking, the Kalecik Karası. And this is kind of like our Pinot. It's very flexible. We have everything from white to, lots of Blanc de Noir, because rosé is a very nice grape for rosé, especially if you like it. We don't have a lot of sweet rosé, thank God. Not a fan, sorry. They're usually quite dry. But Kalecik Karası, one of the most common aroma notes from it is cotton candy. So it really lends itself well as a nice summery rosé. But it can make some very serious red wines, and is in fact one of the more ageable red wines made here.
Wow.
Then we have for whites, Narince, which is kind of our Chardonnay.
Okay.
It does both very well in showing terroir. It's grown across the country now, and it's very different depending on where it's grown. But it's also very malleable and can take a lot of oak in the way that Chardonnay often can.
Does it become buttery? Do they do buttery?
It does.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Buttery and nutty and butterscotchy and all of those things. And then I think Emirch is our other really big.
Okay, we can pronounce that one. We can pronounce that one.
It is. It's a little easier. It's a little more common of a word. And this is from the Cappadocia region, the region that we have the fairy chimneys and cave churches, and you see pictures of Turkey with like hot air balloons. That's all Cappadocia. And that's, I'm not sure I can give a good comparison for that. It's a little bit Albarino, it's a little bit Sauvignon Blanc, it's a little bit of a lot of things, but it often gets described as being slightly salty.
Oh.
Because of the minerality in it. And
oh, I bet I would love that.
Oh, it's such a brilliant grape. It really is. But it does not do well with oak at all. So it's never oaked. But it does often get blended. Apparently it's a very difficult grape to grow. Oh,
okay. Salinity in a wine is my kryptonite, man. I just will bow down to it in there, you know.
Absolutely.
The first time I had an Albarino from Rias Baixas, I was all right. Sign me up. Sign me up. This is it. I'm in love, and you know.
Yeah, I think you would really like our Amir then.
And it's, but you know, I'll go everywhere and I will try the Albarino, and they just can't. They can't get it like Rias Baixas can. They, you know, it's very unique, and you know, I get all excited. Yay, Albarino! Oh, you know, and it's good wine, but I'm like, oh, you know.
It's not got that edge.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's actually very similar to the Albarino, has that same salinity. And neither of them, well, some are going into oak, but you know, they're mostly steel, stainless steel. So now, can we get any of those here in the United States?
You can. In fact, that's why I mentioned those specifically, because if you can find them, those are going to be the grapes that you can find. The Amir, I know specifically, the Tourism Company, which is one of our larger companies. It has a long history in Cappadocia. I know that they're in the U.S.
Okay.
Kalajit Karasa, I know you can get. In fact, the sparkling wine that I'm drinking tonight, I know you can get. The Couscous de Bois here. You should be able to find some of these. A lot of them are. Let me think. They're kind of it's coastal, kind of where you can get the Turkish wines. So it seems to either be like California or Washington State or New York, Connecticut. Interestingly, there's a retailer there.
Connecticut, that's a tough one.
Places in the DC area. I know, right? Connecticut, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
And I think they ship pretty widely to the retailer in Connecticut.
Okay. You've got to send me a message of the actual one you're really drinking, because you know, can I saber it? If I can saber it, I'm all over it.
I have never tried to saber a wine, so I don't know about this one's ability.
It's a true sparkling, though, right? Is it a true sparkling?
It is a true sparkling. In fact, the owner of this particular winery, when she opened her winery, her number one goal was to make the first traditional method sparkling wine with a native grape. And she did it.
She did it.
She was the first. And so a bunch of people have followed. We now have a really wide range of sparkling wines here, made everything from, you know, just adding CO2. We have tank method, and we have a lot of traditional methods, wines, but made out of Turkish grapes, and it's really exciting.
That's awesome. She's my hero. That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So, what if you had to pick your favorite child, which is always the most horrible question. See, it's easy for me. Like, everybody knows it's Cab Franc. It's a piece of cake. Nobody even asks me that question. But if you had to pick a favorite child, what would it be?
You know, I thought about this, and it's such a hard question to answer, not just because I really do love a lot of the grapes, but we're still really learning what a lot of these grapes can do. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that Turkey has no appellation system. We have no viticulture arrows. There's nothing like that here. So winemakers are experimenting with grapes across the country. So this Emir that's from Cappadocia with its volcanic limestone, tube soils, tastes so different there than it does on the Güney Plateau in Izmir, which is more of a Mediterranean, really environment or like really mineral rich soils and everything. So we still don't really know
what grows where.
We can't really pin down yet exactly what a lot of the personalities of these grapes are. So it's so hard to answer that.
It's like the wild west of grape growing.
It really is. I mean, in our Orla region, which is Orla is part of the Izmir, the Aegean region. They have one of the most well put together wine routes, very easy to follow. They have everything from Boğazkere and Nadinja and Cabernet to Ekigina. That was a new grape for me. What else is down there? Sangiovese, Tanat, Marcelon.
Wow.
I'm with everything. So it's very experimental here. It's really kind of cool.
Well, I think that's kind of the way a lot of wine regions get their start, right? They just, you don't know what your region is good at. So
exactly.
you're basically, taking your odds, favoring your odds and saying, if I plant all of these, and I start to play with them, I can always rip these up and plant what really works. So I think they're following in the pattern of most well-established wine regions. This is what they do. I know Arizona, there's a couple of wineries I know in Arizona that are doing exactly the same thing. They're producing, I interviewed somebody and they're producing like 20 different wines. And I'm like, oh my God. And she's like, well, we don't really know what goes well yet. So we kind of make it, and then it goes in the tasting room and we hear what people like, and then we either pull it out or we, bulk up the production. Yeah. So they're following, I think, in the basic premise footsteps of, we all can't be Bordeaux that have had, all of these, generations of growing.
People that, do the work for us and tell us what works here and what doesn't.
Right. Who, by the way, are changing now what their rules are, right? So
they are adding new grapes, right?
Right. So times change, and you've got to adapt or whatever. So I get that. It's so different in different areas that it's a little tough. Now, do you buy most of your wines at the wineries, or are you going to your wine shop and buying out the store?
It's a combination. It's a combination. Because I've kind of set myself a mission that I want to try all of the Turkish wines before whatever nebulous date it might be that I leave the country. So I try not to buy the same wine more than once unless I just completely fall in love with it. So it's a combination. If I'm at a winery, I'll buy wine when I'm there, but I'm also always at the bottle shop. I walk in and they know me so well now, they immediately tell me, oh, this is new. And I'm like, oh, okay. Let me have that then.
You're the norm of Turkish wine. That's awesome. That is awesome. All right. So earlier I mentioned that those amazing videos that you make and the tasting cards. So tell me, I love them. I absolutely love them.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
It's like I see it starting, and I know it's you. So it's brand, it's brand spot on, but it's so good. So how did you develop these, and are you doing these yourselves? Are the wineries helping you promote this? What's going on?
Well, so when I got started with these, these wine infographics are so popular now, and I think really kind of started by Wine Folly, and I love them so much. And then their new book came out, and they had incorporated like some new grapes, like some of the Greek varieties, but there were still no Turkish varieties. And I was like, we got to make these. Nobody else is doing this. We got to do this. So I partnered with a project partner of mine already, my co-author, and we found a phenomenal local graphic designer, Empathy Creative, and between the three of us, we came up with first the tasting cards, and a lot of it, in some cases, was just us sitting down, tasting wines, going, all right, we think that it tastes like this. I mean, full disclosure.
Right. Well,
coming to a consensus. I mean, some of these grapes, like the ones we mentioned before, there are some standardized aromas and flavors that are supposed to be in these, but there are some more unusual grapes that maybe only one or two producers make and we know very little about.
Right.
And extracting information from some of the wineries here is a lot like extracting teeth. So we did some of this research on our own. Research drinking. And that's how we came up with the tasting cards. But then the videos, that was the sole genius of Empathy Creative, of our graphic designer. She just presented us with this as an idea, and we fell in love with it. And so she took the images that she used on the tasting cards and made these little gifts out of them. And we're just so thrilled with them. We're so pleased.
Now, what's your plan? Like, are you creating a tasting notes box or something that like you can sell, or where do you see that going? Because they're awesome. They really are.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I mentioned a couple times that I have a partner. She writes under the name Istanbul. Her blog is about Beyond the Kebab, Turkish food. She's a food historian, and herself a phenomenal bread baker. And we are co-authoring a book about Turkish wines.
Beautiful.
Which will be, if we get a publisher, it will be the first book written in about 15 years about Turkish wine.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we want to put the tasting cards, a big section of the book is going to be about the indigenous grapes, and we want to include these as graphics with those. We want to try to, get people interested in Turkish wine, because I think if we can help make the demand abroad, get people interested in it, and if they start asking their bottle shops, then it will help, get more wines.
Great.
So.
Right. If people ask, the wine shops will find a way to deliver. And
I hope so.
And I mean, it might actually be a really good time to start doing that, because they're focusing in on, they're going to be looking.
As horrible as that is, and I'm still worried about the effect that those are going to have on the industry at large, but maybe they'll be good for us over here.
Yeah. It will, they're going to have to, if it goes through for however long of a period it's going to be, they're going to need something to replace it with, So, when one door closes, the window opens for somebody else, Hopefully
that window looks onto Turkey.
All right. So we joke about the umlauts and that stuff, but what do you really think is the biggest reason there's just that much of a difficulty of the Turkish wines coming here to the U.S.?
I think it's twofold. One, I joke, but I do kind of want to name the book, Yes, They Make Wine in Turkey. So few people know that Turkey makes wine. So I think it just never even enters somebody's mind that they could ask for Turkish wine. But on top of that, for the producers here, we have, maybe 5, 6 really big producers, and these are the ones that you'll find in the U.S. and in Europe. But so many of the producers are smaller producers. And so their stock is limited, which means that they, by themselves, can't really make up a full pallet to export somewhere. And there's some small cooperation issues amongst some of the wineries. So getting them kind of together to, make up a pallet for somebody. I think you need, an exporter who is really dedicated to Turkish wine to come over and be like, all right, look, I know you can't I'm just going to make up the palette myself, but I'm going to take your wine, I'm going to take your wine, and then I'm going to go back and promote the crap out of this. So we have some of the supply, but we need to make the demand, and then,
Well, if that day ever comes that you come back to the United States, I think I see your new job when you come back to the United States.
I actually would love to open my own wine bar if I go back to the States, and focus on what lesser appreciated wine countries and wine regions. I'm very lucky living in Istanbul for any number of reasons, but with the kind of hop over into the next country and explore somebody else's wines for a little while and come back, and huge amount of Turkish wines on my wine list.
If somebody is going to actually travel to Turkey, what are non-wine things that you would say, all right, first of all, how long of a flight is it from the East Coast?
Well, if you get a direct flight, I think it's 8 hours.
Okay, so very doable.
Istanbul. You don't really even have to leave Istanbul if you don't want to. There's so much here, especially for history buffs. We have the area of the city Sultanahmet, where right in this one small area we have the Hagia Sophia, which is one of the oldest Christian churches. It's huge. Apparently, off of her pedestal, the Statue of Liberty will fit under the main dome. This place is enormous.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And this is we're talking back in Constantine's era. This church is so old.
Wow.
So we have that. We have the very famous Blue Mosque, which is beautiful. The Topkapı Palace, which is a proper Ottoman-style palace. It's so stunning. There's an archaeology museum. There are Byzantine churches that, go back centuries. There are, throw a rock and you hit a mosque, and some of these are just stunningly beautiful places. Palaces. We have palaces all up and down the Bosphorus. You can take a Bosphorus tour. We have dolphins. It's very exciting when I spot dolphins. And if you go outside of the city, the easiest day trip for me is you fly into Izmir, get a little bus, and you go to an area called Selçuk, where in a day, you can do all this in a day, and I've done it 8 times, so I know this is true. You go to a place called Mediamana, which is the last house of Mary, where Mary lived with St. John. To the ruins of the city of Ephesus, which are some of the best preserved Greco-Roman ruins in the Aegean.
Wow.
The Ephesus Museum is stunning. There are ruins for, I think it's the Basilica of St. John, where supposedly he's entombed there.
Oh, wow.
I know. And there are ruins nearby. We have Pamukkale, which is about a 3-hour drive from there. These are the limestone travertines.
Oh.
It's just Google this place. The pictures are stunning. But this country is a historian's dream.
And what about food? What's your main dish Because that's always my problem.
It's a big meat country.
Yeah.
If you like meat, this is a good place for you. Barbecue is a huge thing here. So they have the kebab, and the doner, the big
thing like get a Greek. Yeah.
Yes, that. But their menus here are also incredible and varied, and have the English, like the grape leaf.
Okay. So very Greek type, Mediterranean food.
Mediterranean, that's a more politic.
Politically correct way to say it.
Yeah. But also there's a lot of fish, so if you're not a meat eater, fish is so widely available here, particularly, again, I'm losing the English, anchovies.
Okay.
I love anchovies. It's a really wide food menu, and honestly, the farther east in the country you go, the better the food gets.
Okay. All right, so there's a nice little tip for travelers. Okay. All right, so my last question is going back to the wineries. If somebody was coming now to visit the wineries, are they planning like a day in this wine region and a day in this wine region? Or can they really just travel about? I mean,
I think a lot of it depends on how much time you have.
Okay.
Since you do have to fly to a number of the places, my suggestion would be to pick a region.
Okay.
And then do a couple wineries there, but also hit some of these historical tourist sites. You can combine a lot of them. Like for example, we have a lot of wineries on the Gallipoli Peninsula. So particularly every Australian I have ever met, you don't come to Turkey and not go to the Gallipoli Peninsula to Çanakkale and see the war memorials there. But then across the water from that is Troy.
Oh.
And so you can, you can go enjoy that kind of Hellenistic history and some of the nice beaches and hit a few wineries.
All right. Sounds like a perfect vacation. Vacation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, earlier you mentioned how there's snow in the upper north region or whatever. Is there a better time? Like, what is your peak tourist time versus when might people be able to get better deals type during the year?
I think peak tourist time is kind of May through September.
Okay.
But at least here in Istanbul and in the south and the east of the country, we have pretty warm and temperate weather through November, early December sometimes. And you can also come as early as March or April. It might rain a little bit, but your prices are definitely going to be cheaper, and some of these attractions are going to be far less crowded during those periods. Yeah.
Awesome. So, as you know, since you listen, I always end these interviews with my little Phoebe game of opposites. So I'm just going to say 2 words, and whichever one, resonates with you first, I guess. We'll do that. We're going to start off with some non-wine terms, and then we will move on to onto the wine terms. Okay?
Okay.
All right, here we go. Night or day?
Night.
Sunset or sunrise?
Ooh, sunrise.
Black or white?
Black.
Walk or run?
Oh, walk. I don't run.
I don't run anywhere. Food or drink?
Drink.
Old world, new world?
Old world.
Sweet or dry?
Oh, both? Can I have both?
Sure. Okay. Absolutely. Bubbles or still?
I'm
Both?
bubbles since that's what I'm drinking right now.
Okay. Oak or stainless?
Stainless.
Drink now or drink later?
Drink now.
Blend or varietal?
Varietal.
Vintage or non-vintage?
I would like to say vintage, but I can't really afford it usually.
That's a good answer. Okay. Cork or screw cap?
Cork.
Commercial or indigenous?
Indigenous.
Bordeaux or Rhone?
Rhone.
Warm climate or cool climate?
Cool climate.
And Napa or Sonoma? Turkey.
Sonoma. I know, I'm like, when was the last time I had a wine from either of those places?
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and to share all your knowledge of Turkey and Turkish wines. And, you know, I really...
Such a pleasure and an honor, really. This was such a highlight, and it's starting my year this way. This is so brilliant.
Oh, and I just really, it's so awesome to like see you face to face and to talk to you, so that other people can find you and see these awesome gifts that you do and the things, the tasting cards and all that. Where can people find you on the social medias?
So you can find me, I have a website, thequirkycork.com. You can also find me on Instagram under Quirky Cork, or on Twitter at Lemieux.Andrea.
Thank you for joining me. I will see everybody on the socials, and thanks for listening to Allure of the Poor. Slancha.
Thank you, Lori.
This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I'm also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoyt-Budd. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com. If you enjoyed our podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast catcher to help others find me more easily. Until next week, Slancha.